I mean, catching fish, that was our job. And it was called the boom years. We thought it was never going to finish. Thought it was always going to be like that.
We swept everything up. I did believe, honestly, the first time that I saw it, that it was morally wrong. And conservation should have come in a lot earlier than what it did.
It would have been lovely to have made a safer, better industry instead of letting it just go into the gutter. After all, the men who've given their lives to feed this country and other countries.
This is the story of the industrialisation of fishing in the North Sea, and it's one that can be told through the images of archive films spanning a century. It's a powerful story, full of greed, irony and political betrayal. It's also about an industry under lethal pressure, which ultimately destroyed itself. Fishing is the most treacherous of all occupations. By the 1960s, the job was said to claim a life every 8 days. This appalling accident rate could have been reduced, but that would have meant greater control over the industry, something fishermen have always resisted.
The fishing fraternity are all out for themselves, and if they saw a fast buck, they would take a chance and go to sea when sort of common sense would say no, but that's what they did.
Now into his 90s, Ralph Mitchell remembers well the pressures facing those fishermen in the early 1920s. From Lowestoft in Suffolk, his family was a major player in the burgeoning industry.
At that time there must have been between 200 and 300 drifters sailing from this port. When you think that they were all steamers and they'd all been fired up, and if there wasn't much wind, the Waveney dock and all the other docks used to be shrouded with smoke, as something like a real pea souper. But to see all these boats going out, between 200 and 300, within an hour, hour and a half, was quite a sight, you know.
Ports all around the east coast of Britain boomed as these early films show. Fish was plentiful, and so was the labour to catch it. By the end of the 1920s, though, the market was so saturated that unsold fish was dumped back out at sea.
At that time, there was no restrictions, but later on, they did have a system of putting up flags at the entrance, which said various things. There was a no flag, which meant that no boats were able to sail, and other colours, which meant to the fishermen the number of nets that they could shoot, according to the supply and demand.
Well, they had the regulations, but I'll be honest with you, not all the skippers, the greedy ones, kept to the regulation of, say, 51, 61 nets. When it got dark, they would tumble the spare nets over the side, so they were making rods for their own backs, really.
This early form of overfishing wasn't helped by the migratory habits of the herrings. Abundant shoals would appear each year at the same places down the east coast. From all parts of the country, people migrated too. It was called chasing the herring, and many women, known as herring girls, were involved.
We chased the herring. My father was foreman at the fish house. My mother travelled. All the herrings was on a bench right in front of us. There was about 20 women stood in a row that was doing the same as me. Just taking a herring and sticking the knife into the herring and cutting it one way and then the other way. One of the men that worked there, he used to put them in a basket and take it to the temperers, and they used to prick them onto the hooks. And when the hooks was full, he used to lift the bark up and hand it to the a man that was in the smokehouse. And while you was handing it up, you was getting all the drips sort of running right down you. And then after they'd been smoked all night, the box used to come down and be put on racks. And then we used to have to pack the kippers then into boxes for the smell. We was used to it. It didn't affect us at all. But other people could. They could smell us as we were walking by. We'd smell the kippers in our air. And I was a herring girl through and through for 10 years.
Children as young as 13 were expected to go fishing. It was the East Coast's equivalent of the mining industry.
Sometimes you're a bit of a nuisance to them. I don't know why, but then you got another crew who would take to a young boy. If he was a good cook, they would take to him. I went cook in one of the old herring drifters. And my mother had taught me to cook. She knew I was going to sea. And she'd also shown me how to braid nets. A lot of time, the skipper and crew didn't want to mix with the cook when I was a youngster. You didn't all sit at the table at once because there was not room. You went and had your meal. The cook and what they called the cast-off, that was the next rank up. You had your meal sitting with it on your lap. And when you'd finished the meal, the skipper would say, "On deck, boy. Men are talking here," as if you weren't supposed to hear men's conversation.
While the young Alan Knights may not have been privy to grown men talking, he was certainly expected to do a man's job.
I would go down to the rope room, the rest of the crew took up their positions, and you were down there until the last net came on board. If you didn't get any fish at all, about 3 hours. If you got a fair amount of fish, 7 or 8 hours, maybe up to 18 hours with a massive haul of fish.
Some trips, though, yielded little profit. A poor catch would be blamed on anything. Superstition was a convenient way of covering up bad luck, and at worst, bad seamanship.
There were boats that were unlucky, boats that never earned money, and there were men who were unlucky. And if the man who was unlucky, he went to a skipper to get a situation, he said, "I'll think about it." And he said, "I don't want to take him, he's unlucky, he never earns any money anyway." So the best fishermen got the best situations.
This emphasis on superstition was all part of the romantic view of life at sea. Yet the hard facts couldn't be more real. Technological advances with radar and sonar meant that by the 1950s, fishermen were becoming more adept at catching fish. This inflicted further damage on already beleaguered stocks. It was one of nature's mysteries that the herring shoals appeared with precise regularity. Then, over a few short years, they never appeared at all. A new expression entered the vocabulary: overfishing.
The drifting finished in about 1961. It just faded out, to my way of thinking. It was these purse seiners who were catching everything, immature herring and the spawn as well. And the drifters slowly drifted off till we got down from 70 or 80 to about 5 or 6. And then in 61, it stopped altogether.
Drifting boats were either scrapped or converted to trawlers. More profitable trawling shifted to Grimsby and Hull. They became the biggest fishing ports in the world. But the rapid decline of fish stocks in the North Sea forced British fishermen to exploit the rich fishing grounds around Iceland and beyond. But with that came danger.
Iceland was a cow of a place in the winter. If you was going to have problems, Iceland would be the place. We hated it in the winter, really hated it. because if anything was going to go wrong, it was going to be Iceland. Wind you didn't mind, them ships could go through anything. But you combine wind with freezing conditions, oh no, that's a different story. That's frightening.
Main injuries that we used to get at sea were blood poisons. Blood poisoning and saltwater boils, which most of us used to get round our wrists. But the spines on some of the fish were rather poisonous. Some of the wire attached to the trawl doors, which dragged along the ocean bed, got spiky. I've had blood poisoned fingers with those. Trapped fingers, trapped hands.
Danger was so much a part of their lives that it became acceptable. Attempts to impose safety measures from outside were seen as unwanted interferences in their masculine world.
Trawler fisherman is among the closest knit community you could ever find at sea. Even if you weren't special friends, when you came to working together on the deck, which was actually a very, very classic case of precision workmanship, hauling and shooting a set of gear in bad weather, any kinds of feelings of enmity was gone. You worked together.
We'd all in the nets, and she took a dollop, and I went over, and the mate, bloke called Snowy Christopherson, grabbed me by the back of my frock, because we used to wear rubber frocks on the deck to protect ourselves, and pulled me back aboard the ship, and then he gave me a clip round the lug hole and stopped mucking about, was the words he said to me. I don't know if he thought I was mucking about or not, but I had to change my underpants, I know that.
Pressures on the men to catch more and more fish were enormous. They took risks in appalling conditions to chase profits.
I think everybody took risks in this job because you had to give 100%. I mean, the first and foremost thing was your crew and the ship, and then finally yourself. But you did take risks. Fishing in heavy weather and pushing it to the absolute limit. But at the end of the day, all we was interested in was making cash. That's why the owners built bigger ships. And the skippers, you was only as good as your last trip on it, as regards a skipper, because if you made a bad trip, you was out.
With this desperate need to land fish against the odds came tragedy. It touched most trawlermen, but didn't put them off going to sea.
In 1948, I wanted one trip to be able to get home in time for my 21st birthday and to get engaged. And I was about to sign on a ship, the Sargon. But then I realised that my uncle was skipper of a captain, if you will. So I signed on a sister ship instead. As it turns out, the Sargon, during a very, very severe snowstorm off the northwest coast of Iceland, visibility was nil, no radar, anything like that. She struck the rocks, and if I remember right, I think there were about 6 crew, or 7 out of the 18 that were lost. The rest were brought ashore at great risk by the Icelandic Coast Guard and volunteers, and there happened to be a German film crew in the area at the time, and this film shows you those men being pulled ashore by Breach's Buoy. And I can't think of a more harrowing experience, because looking at that wheelhouse, I found out very soon after that the men in the wheelhouse were the ones who died. And when I look at that film now, I think of my uncle, I'm named after him as a matter of fact, was in there, one of those that died. I've only recently found this film, and in a way I'm pleased that Mother wasn't alive to see it.